I cannot for the life of me think of a time in recent British political history, and my history isn't good enough to know about some of the other sort of key issues. I know what the Suez Crisis was, I know how it happened and how it unfolded, but I don't know what was really happening in Parliament at the time. Don't ring me to tell me, we'll save that for another day. But I cannot for the life of me think of a parliamentary landscape that looked as confused and as confusing as the current one. And I've got a horrible feeling that's why we are sort of being discouraged from talking about it. Why on earth have the Times led with employers must reveal ethnic pay gap of staff on a day when the parliamentary arithmetic is such that we could see any one of a dizzying array of cataclysmic occurrences unfold in the next 2 or 3 weeks? One Conservative backbencher has just tweeted very winningly about how there is no vacancy for the leadership. I don't know why everyone's talking about it. However, we could have a new leader in place within a fortnight if it were to transpire that we needed to do so. And then you've got the other story, a story I quite like actually, Jeremy Corbyn's attempt to sort of draw slightly different conclusions from British history. But that is really insane to be seeing that as a priority at the moment when current British history is being written and nobody knows what the next line will be, least of all me. And this is quite a refreshing position to find myself in, because there have been few more dispiriting experiences in my life, both professionally and personally, than seeing almost all of my worst fears about Brexit come slowly and inexorably true. I have no idea what happens now. I have no idea what happens now, because we're back to human agency. We're back to how will people behave. Nobody can ever really predict that. What will happen when the Good Friday Agreement comes up against the red lines that Theresa May laid out in the Mansion House speech? Well, I can work that out. I can tell you. You can disagree. You can put your fingers in your ears and shout fish. But I know I'm right on that, because I'm looking at analysis of written down words. Similarly, when you speak to people in the haulage industry about what might happen in the event of no deal, and they provide you with the detail and the paperwork that you need, you know what is going to happen. You can persuasively and convincingly put together a case. I don't know if you've seen Faisal Islam's story over at Sky News about the haulage industry being compelled to sign non-disclosure agreements with the government. He broke this in March. It's now been confirmed. So you remember our Kieran, our van driver, which is a slightly inaccurate description of him, but why were relatively small scale players ringing me up to tell us about the chaos that would ensue on our borders with regard to haulage and transport, while the massive players in the industry were silent? Answer, we now know the massive players in the industry, and indeed the lobbyists, were ordered to sign non-disclosure agreements by government. So they'd go in to talk to the government about their fears on the condition that they promised not to talk to anybody else about their evidence-based fears. That's quite unprecedented, but Brexit's broken everything, absolutely everything. So now even that, big business groups banned from telling the public about the reality around the corner as a condition of explaining to the government why they're so fearful of the reality around the corner. You thought I was exaggerating 6 months ago. Well, you know I'm not now. Similarly, you have this astonishing attempt, the contortions that are now being undertaken by people who insist that they still love Brexit. The contortions that are still being undertaken are quite incredible. I mean, genuinely incredible. You have the absurd Quentin Letts in the Daily Mail today, and he can really write. But he's today saying he's going to vote for Jeremy Corbyn because he's so disappointed in Theresa May. So there you have a very prominent, very right-wing journalist, so incapable of admitting that his beloved Brexit is an absolute disaster, that now, in an attempt to give himself a little bit more breathing space, to kick the can a little bit further down the road, he's claiming in print that he's going to vote for Jeremy Corbyn, neatly overlooking, of course, as is the wont of newspaper columnists, that he doesn't actually live in Jeremy Corbyn's constituency. So the madness is almost unparalleled. It is, I mean, genuinely epic. And I think I can say that without actually upsetting anybody, because the lunatic fringe, well, that's going to upset somebody, but the lunatic fringe of the Brexit movement, represented by your Jacob Rees-Mogg, and I think he means it, and your Boris Johnson, who clearly doesn't mean it, but has decided that's the only horse he can currently hitch himself to, they're as cross with Theresa May as people who would describe themselves as hardcore Remainers. because this deal that she's going to put through is probably the least bad that can be realistically done, but that's still too bad for Remainers and not bad enough for the people that want to burn the whole house down, i.e. Jacob Rees-Mogg and co. And then you've got the DUP, who received the £1 billion from the government in return for the 10 votes that Theresa May needed to have an operational working majority. They've now threatened to vote down the budget, which is historically a vote of no confidence in the government, if the deal, as it inevitably must, we've been explaining this to you for 2 years, if you accommodate the Good Friday Agreement, then the border in Ireland is probably going to have to be in the Irish Sea, which is something that the DUP won't countenance. So that £1 billion bung to get the DUP to back up Theresa May appears to have been the worst value bribe in the history of bribes. Are you still with me at the back? And then both sides are claiming they've got the numbers, which means that Theresa May is going to Labour MPs and essentially trying to argue that, look, it's not perfect. There is one good line I heard Michael Gove say, I think, this week, which is we shouldn't let... good is not the enemy of perfect, or perfect is not the... I've forgotten what the line was. Never mind. Someone will remind me. But the idea that there is no perfect deal, therefore you should back this one, is quite compelling until somebody else points out, but it's not as good as what we've currently got. And what we've currently got is not no deal. A lot of people are labouring under the illusion that no deal means staying as we are. You still with me at the back? How the hell are we going to unravel all this? I mean, what is parliamentary politics in Britain? Two-party politics, right? That's the party that one of them contains Ken Clarke and Jacob Rees-Mogg, and the other party contains Chris Williamson and Hilary Benn. I mean, the idea that those are two recognisable, coherent positions is palpably absurd, isn't it? That there are about 40 parties in Parliament at the moment. There are about 5, realistically, with relevance to Brexit, all of whom, as this vote looms, could conceivably pull it off. God, he's good, isn't he? I am incorrigible. He's already there. Let's not make the perfect the enemy of the good. And that is what people like Gove are now saying, while desperately hoping that people like you and me stop pointing out that what he's describing as good, although not perfect, is, compared to what we've currently got, demonstrably bad. I'm going home. It's 11 minutes after 10. The number you need is 0345 6060973. I've had a go at explaining what's going on. Part of me wants to invite you to do the same, in the hope that you might actually do a slightly better job of it. 0345 6060973. But in terms of what's actually going to happen next, when you set it against the context of taking back control, and I think there are still people here who can say that phrase without sniggering or collapsing into fits of giggles. One day it will be up there with strong and stable as on the list of the most ill thought out and inaccurate political slogans in history. But in terms of taking back control, we now have a situation in which the balance of power in the British Parliament could be held either by 10 Northern Irish MPs, who, in the context of Brexit, were on the winning side nationally, but the losing side locally. You could have the balance of power held by the absolute disaster capitalist headbangers, mixed in with a smattering of racists, the sort of ERG-style outlook on the world, coupled with, there's 3 strands to that. There's the nationalism stroke racism, there's the disaster capitalism, and then there's the weapons-grade stupidity, probably best represented by Nadine Dorries, although people like Owen Paterson give her a decent run for her money at the moment. Owen Paterson's latest intervention is to suggest that people knew that we were leaving the customs union and the single market because they believed the people who told them that, the people that we called liars. People voted for us, Owen Paterson argued this week, because they didn't believe us. That's where we are now in British politics. So the balance of power could be held by the DUP, it could be held by a minority of Conservative headbangers, or it could be held by a minority of Conservative moderates, or it could be held by about 30 Labour MPs that Theresa May is trying to woo with the "don't let the perfect be the enemy of the good" school of thought. Anybody? I mean, this is absolutely nuts, and I can't make any sense of it now. I have no idea what's going to happen, who's going to jump in which direction, who's going to get into bed with whom, who is going to end up on top at the end of it all. I don't even know who's going to be leader of the Conservative Party between now and Christmas. And that is really frightening, because and genuinely frightening, because what it tells us is that the rules-based institutions upon which this country relies for stability, security and relative prosperity are so profoundly under threat now by confusion and division that it's almost impossible to say anything with confidence, let alone certainty, about the near future, never mind the long-term future. And that's really frightening. So, for example, the DUP vote against the budget gets defeated. Historically, that would be a vote of no confidence. But Brexit has broken that historical precedent. Theresa May will try to hang on. Jeremy Corbyn doesn't really have a policy on the single biggest issue facing the country, and yet he stands in the wings, observing the unfolding disaster, knowing that it increases every day the likelihood of him becoming Prime Minister. A prospect which many of us who quite like some of his policies find chilling on the grounds of believing that he's not personally fit for the office. Have you ever known British politics to be quite as confused and as confusing as this? Or can you pick it? Can you unpick it in a way that will help the rest of us feel a little less baffled? And I don't like coming on air. You know me, I'm a extremely cocky individual when it comes to the analysis of recent political events. I've hugely enjoyed getting stuff right, and absolutely hated the fact that every time I'm proved right, it makes the country worse. It makes the future look bleaker. I have no idea what happens now. Genuinely no idea. I know how we got here. It was always inevitable when a massive nation-changing vote saw essentially emotion triumph over reason. It saw feelings beat facts, and that's normal. All of us live our lives sometimes allowing feelings to overcome facts. But of course, the people who fostered those feelings cannot ever admit that they did so dishonestly or indeed ignorantly. So you're left with people like Quentin Letts saying he's going to vote for Jeremy Corbyn rather than Theresa May, because the alternative is to say Brexit was always a dog's breakfast. It was always going to be a dog's breakfast, and I'm so sorry for pretending that this dog's breakfast was ever going to be edible. They can't do that. None of them can. So where are we?